Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your hosts Edward McQueen and April Garner.
Wow, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to our broadcast. Didn't think we were going to make it today, but lo and behold, here we are. Facebook had some issues, and we got on our website first. And then I guess a few minutes ago, found out that Facebook was back up again. So welcome to our program, and hope you get some information that you deem pertinent for your everyday lives today. Of course, as you saw with our promotion, who we're going to have on our program today. And I guess I can speak for my co-host too, my sister, April Garner. She's been awfully busy these days, but she's with us behind the scenes, okay, and doing a fantastic job behind the scenes. So anyway, welcome to the program. And so we want to get started. Today we want to talk about our law enforcement issues. I know I've been gotten some word from some people about, how the local law enforcement entities dealing with the issue that happened out in Longs with the shooting of the young man. And, there've been some things going on. So we decided to, we don't know if we're going to be able to have him address your issues on that because please be advised that, as far as I know, it's an ongoing investigation and it's maybe out of his jurisdiction anyway. But today we're going to have, and we're glad to have Chief Joseph Hill. He's the chief of the Horry County Police Department. And Chief, let's start right now. Okay. So what do you think?
Greetings.
Ready. All right. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Good.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So we've had you here. Can you hear me, by the way?
I can. Got you loud and clear.
Okay. Good. So you familiar with the format and so forth. So we've had you in a number of times, I guess, a couple of times anyway. So again, welcome to the program, and we're going to get started. I'm just going to start by asking you about some of the. I know that there was a significant infusion of money into your budget recently, and to me, it wasn't clarified as to unless some of the things you couldn't talk about at the time, but some of the things that you were going to spend them on or need to be spent on. And can you give us a scenario of the budget in terms of totality of how much and so forth?
Sure. So in regards to the funding, we were very grateful to the county council. They gave us quite a bit of what we asked for in the way of additional officer positions. We were able to secure a federal grant called the COPS grant, and that's a federal grant that's passed through the state of South Carolina.
Right.
And we were able to secure 15 additional positions, and the county council gave us, on top of that, 15 additional positions over a 3-year period.
Right.
We're going back into a winter session to renegotiate some of that because we're building the 5th precinct, but we're actively now recruiting as best we can.
Okay. Since you mentioned about the building of the was it 6th precinct, 5th?
That's going to be the 5th precinct.
5th precinct. And where's that going to be located?
That's going to be located off of International Drive, servicing that whole section to include the Carolina Forest area.
Carolina Forest. Manned what amount of manpower you
so
expect?
The staffing that's required to operate a precinct is approximately 45 individuals, to include a civilian position, front desk position, of course, all the command staff and the patrol officers. And how that's going to benefit the county as a whole is it's going to reduce the sectors that we currently have across the county. So, for instance, out in the Longs area, the West Precinct covers the Longs area. We have one patrol sector that covers 101 square miles. Our goal is to reduce these sectors down to at least half of what they currently are,
Right.
and compress them, because in the next 5 to 8 years, we're looking at a sixth precinct, and that's in relation to the amount of growth we're seeing in the county if that continues to grow. We're anticipating some slowdown in that growth, but when that's going to happen, I'm not really sure.
Okay. So what do you think will be addressed once you have this fifth precinct? That's in the Carolina Forest area, right?
That is true. That's all for International Drive in the Carolina Forest area.
Right. So what do you think will be improved upon with community relations, so
Sure.
forth? Any of the issues could be solved by with that?
That's a great question. So I've always said this, and I try to make it very clear that having a brick and mortar structure, unlike the fire department that responds from the house, our offices are vehicles. So we're on the road all the time. So it's not so much what does a building give you, it's the officers that you put in that building. So those 45 additional police officer positions over the next 3 years is going to help us reduce our response time. Right now, because we only have about close to 270 officers, and if you look at it, it sounds like a lot, but we cover 1,200 square miles and approximately 340,000 full-time residents and about 17 million plus visitors every year. For instance, Carolina Forest, you have 2 officers that work that whole area, and there's about 45,000 residents that live in Carolina Forest and growing. So if an officer responds to a domestic violence complaint, you always want to send 2 officers. Now you have no one who's actively doing proactive patrol.
Right.
If that officer has to make an arrest and goes to J. Reuben Long, it pulls 1 officer out of a sector. So we need to double these officers in these sectors to provide that proactive patrolling. Furthermore, it allows officers downtown to actually do community policing, get out of their cruisers, actually interact with the citizens they serve, and provide that visibility that we need in some of these communities, especially in the lowest communities.
Right. So it's you feel that Lawrence now is inadequate in terms of being service.
We are actually behind.
Yes,
Yes, sir. We're actually behind the national scale. So if you look at what ICP, the International Associations of Chiefs Police, what they recommend is 2 officers per every 1,000 citizens. We should be, as a police department, about 500 officers. We are under 300 right now. So the county council understands that. Our administrators understand that, and they're pushing to get more officers on the street. But it takes time. It takes time from the time you actually announce a hiring initiative, find somebody, get them through the process, get them through the academy, and make them patrol ready to operate by themselves. You're looking at almost a year. So it takes a considerable amount of time, resources to make a police officer effective for community patrol.
Okay, so how, in order to make it much more attractive, well, first of all, let me ask you, what is the attrition rate for officers?
We've been very grateful, or very blessed, and extremely grateful to county council because they've upped our pay. When I first got here, I think the pay was $35,000 starting out. We're now at $41,000 for the initial pay. Not to mention all the pay raises we've received, COVID support over the last 18 months. So it makes it very attractive. We are recruiting officers from around the country. We've recently just hired some officers that were local officers. Not that we go out and try to, rob from our partner agencies, but I think officers kind of weigh the benefits of coming to the county where we have 1,200 square miles to patrol, 5 precincts, and the advancement opportunities are far greater than a lot of agencies around here.
So, and I don't want to pose this as a real tough question, but is there an advantage of not hiring local officers as opposed to an advantage of hiring people from out of the county who know nothing about Horry County?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, most of the folks we would recruit would come out of Horry County, and there's a lot of positive reasons for recruiting from your community. One, it tightens the bond with the community that we serve. Two, it gives a person a leg up for financial freedom. I mean, working for the county government, at the end of your 25 years, you get a lifetime annuity, which is your pension. So there's a lot of benefit to coming to the county. Three, you know the geographic area of Horry County, which is extremely huge. I had a handicap when I first got here, and it took me about a year to make it to all parts of Horry County. And I still couldn't tell you what some of these streets names are. So there is an advantage to hiring local. However, if you can't find the local talent, then you got to have a blended police force. So we have officers from across the country that have come from other police departments, maybe want to start a career in law enforcement after graduating college or serving their military time, and they want to be close to the beach. So that's one of the attraction factors we have in Horry County. Not to mention we have great resources, great equipment, great training, and I like to think we have sound leadership that actually cares about their officers.
So those things have been working successfully in terms of attracting them? Just those amenities of attraction?
Yeah, I mean, we still are struggling to find qualified applicants.
Right.
We currently have about 25 vacancies that we're trying to fill. We've got another grant opportunity that's looming that could add additional 15 positions. So you're looking at 40 vacant positions if that grant should come to fruition. But we're working hard to get folks in the door. COVID has put a real hard ceiling on some of the things that we are able to accomplish with the military outreach, but we're getting ready to get back into that as some of the COVID restrictions are lifted. But it's a challenge nationwide. It's just not Horry County. When I was a cop in Virginia, we faced a lot of challenge, especially hiring qualified applicants of color, and female applicants is always a challenge. So we're always looking to improve on those numbers.
Why is that a challenge?
I think it has always been a challenge because as a young Black male growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, no one ever spoke to me about the benefits of becoming a police officer. In fact, as I became a teenager, the police was looked at as an opposing force, if you will. Now, there were some police officers that came in the community and changed that perception. But you've always been told, well, cops don't make a lot of money. It's a very dangerous job. It comes with a lack of appreciation. And to some extent, all of that is true. However, when you look at the long-term benefits of working for local government and law enforcement, steady pay raises in most jurisdictions, good equipment and training to reduce the hazards of the job. And at the end of your 20 or 25 years, depending on jurisdiction you're working for, you get a lifetime annuity. And so our officers who make it to retirement are living comfortable lives. And I think there's a great benefit. Not only that, you get to serve the community that you get to live in or that looks like you. So we struggle right now, especially with some of the conflict that we see in our country with African Americans and law enforcement. So it's incumbent upon us as leaders in the law enforcement profession to turn some of those misperceptions around.
So then what are you doing? What are you, have you
Well, what
proposed
we're
anything?
doing
Or
in
what's,
Horry County is
right.
that we're getting out in the community. We have been. We have community officers. We have HOA meetings. Our community officers are doing a lot of not necessarily crime fighting work, but food drives. Matter of fact, today we're partnering with Greg's Groceries to set up a food distribution. No, that's not crime fighting per se, but what it is a way to connect with the community.
Community
So
relations.
if a community member feels like, well, law enforcement actually cares about me. When a crime occurs, maybe I feel like I need to talk to law enforcement to make my community safer. So now that I got you at the table as a partner in solving problems, maybe you are going to say to your niece or your nephew, you might want to consider a career in law enforcement with the Horry County Police Department.
Okay, I recall from your our last interview with you on our last time we had you on the program. you were practicing law enforcement in Virginia, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I retired from Fairfax County, Virginia.
Fairfax County. How much of a difference do you find that from being here in Horry County as opposed to Fairfax?
Sure.
I'm not trying to be facetious about that because I know it is quite a difference there.
Yes, sir. You lived in the metropolitan DC area for some time, so you understand the resources, and especially in Fairfax County, the second richest county in the nation. We could buy whatever we wanted to buy when we wanted to buy it. Training and salaries were almost double what Horry County is paying. But what I'll tell you in the time I've been here, and I've served with the DC Police Department and the Fairfax County Police Department, the men and women of the Horry County Police Department and the Gray Strand as a whole are fully committed to their community. And these officers are out doing the work for a quarter or half the price of some of these bigger agencies around the country and still getting the job done. And I've actually been so impressed with the caliber of police officers we have in this region. I couldn't even begin to tell you. So the difference is a lack of resources, but we're making up for that with the drive of our officers on the street. And I got to tell you, even with the resources, to be as small as we are compared to some of the larger agencies, the county council has seen fit to provide us with the funding to make sure we have the best of the best.
Oh, that's so good to hear, man. I personally haven't heard any major controversies like other even cities just slightly larger than us, or places like Charlotte or whatever. Nothing compared to there. So that must make you feel good about that, and that makes it seem like you all are doing something that's right. You know.
Yeah, what I'll tell you about that is we have an outstanding community that we serve, and we're not perfect in law enforcement. And when things happen, I think it's important to identify those leaders in those community sectors that we can sit down and speak with. After the George Floyd incident, I had reached out to the NAACP president down in Myrtle Beach, several clergy members in the community to see what we can do to explain our use of force, our community involvement, and what our philosophy is. I can't speak to what happens in Minneapolis, but I can speak to what happens in Horry County. And I tell you, the churches around here opened up their doors. We had community forums. We had rallies. Matter of fact, myself and the sheriffs, we were in front of those rallies, leading those marches for justice. And, you know, on top of that, there's a group called the Peaceful Protest out of Coastal Carolina University. A lot of young people with great minds that wanted to know some answers. And we actually invited them into our use of force simulator. We gave them a lesson on our policies and procedures and our training, and then we put them through a simulator for about an hour. It was an eye-opening experience for them, and it benefited us as well, and we were very pleased to be able to do that.
I think I went through the simulator once before, but I'm not sure. But it was what I went through was really eye-opening. Okay. You know, people ask, and every time somebody gets shot, for example, and it's fatal to the victim by a policeman, the question always comes up: why couldn't they wound the person? Okay, why shoot to kill? Is that too blunt? I mean, can you address that?
Yeah, and I think April is reaching out to you as well, but I'll answer very quickly. So I get that question a lot, and I've gotten that question when I was a Fairfax County officer, and my wife actually asked that question quite often. Why couldn't you shoot a suspect in the leg? So officers are trained to stop an aggressive act. And that aggressive act could be an attack on an officer or attack on someone else. And so when an officer is in a struggle or under pressure, there's a lot of factors involved. it's very difficult for an officer, and we're not trained marksmen. We're trained to use our weapons effectively. But when you're talking about shooting at a small extremity, let's say your arm or your leg,
Right.
you've got to consider what's behind you. Could there be a house, a trailer, people behind you? And you've got to aim for the larger part of the human anatomy, which is your center mass.
Right.
And that's the way officers are trained to do. Of course, if you're in a struggle on the ground or, close quarter combat, you're going to shoot in the middle part of that aggressive suspect, which is the chest cavity or the stomach area, to stop that aggressive act.
Look, this thing has gotten so, our conversation has gotten so ensuing here. It's time for a commercial break. Can you just hope we're going to come right back to our audience, and everybody just stay with us, okay? We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. Tell me we're back. That was quick. So we're back. Thanks. You're back. You're listening to, or you're looking, viewing our World Community Magazine live program. And thanks to our engineer for running those commercials for us, and certainly appreciate that. Let's get back to, there's a commercial. There's one thing I'd like to our audience to take note of, and that is on this Saturday, October 23rd. Okay, now we're gonna bring back we had Gullah last week, I believe, and now we're gonna have a screening and community discussions on Gullah roots. This is gonna be a free event. Okay, Saturday, October 23rd is 1 p.m. It's at the Liv Jackson Student Union theater at Coastal Carolina University. You're going to enjoy this. It's just new revelations of history. Community discussions, and it's going to be, if you can't make it, it's going to be streaming live, virtual. Okay, so, and Miss Gullah herself, Miss Veronica Gerald Floyd, she's the founder of the Charles Joyner Institute for Gullah Diaspora Studies at Coastal Carolina University. You don't want to miss this. I said that's on Saturday, October 23rd at 1 p.m. And thanks to Ms. McIver for making sure that that is talked about today. Okay, thank you, Ms. Marjorie McIver. So, and back to our guests. Yes, sir. We're talking with Chief Joseph Hill, Horry County Police Department Chief Joseph Hill. He's been kind of running down some things on the police department and throughout the county. And we have a few more questions for him before we leave today. One that I want. Well, let's go to one of our comments here. Chief, could you see the comments?
I couldn't. I could see April's, but I couldn't see. Okay, I can see it now.
Yeah. It says, thank you for appearing today. I'm concerned about the number of shootings and gun availability. People who should not have them. Wants to know how it's being addressed.
Well, that's a very complicated question because you're talking about gun availability and gun laws across the country. So let's just talk about Horry County. So this summer, the state allowed open carry of firearms with training. It was called the Open Firearms Training Act. So that allowed anyone who had a concealed weapons permit to carry their guns open. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little nervous about that, even though we had open carry in the state of Virginia, with no problems. And so far, I am pleased to report we've had no issues that I'm aware of in Horry County as a result of that new act. But we do have a gun problem in Horry County. We have a gun problem in this country. And I am a Second Amendment advocate. I am a gun owner. I collect them. I like to shoot them. I'm an advocate. However, I'm also a cop that's concerned about the safety of our community. We did an operation in Longs and Loris about 4 months ago and recovered almost 75 guns. We duplicated that same effort down in Socastee and recovered one day 15 guns from one car. So the gun issue in this county is prevalent. And one of the issues we're finding is that legal gun owners are leaving their guns in their vehicles when it's unattended, whether it's overnight or going into the store, and folks are going in the cars and stealing guns. Visitors to the area, especially at the campgrounds, are leaving their guns in their trucks and in their vehicles when they're sleeping in the campers, and people are rummaging through. If you've never been down to some of the campgrounds on the beach, it's a city in and of itself. Right. And so you find people taking sometimes 15 to 20 guns a night just going from car to car. And so those guns wind up in the hands of our youth. They wind up in the hands of our criminals. They're used as a bartering system in exchange for narcotics. And unfortunately, they're used in some homicides in the county.
Wow. So you think that made a dent in what you all were trying to do?
It's hard to quantify the results of our roundup. But what I can say anecdotally is that if you've got a gun out of the hands of a criminal, maybe there was a life saved. Could I be certain of that? I don't know, because there's many guns out there and other ways to do damage. But we can't give up. We got to continue to do what we have to do to enforce the laws of the county and keep our people safe. We also have an issue here as a perception of crime. Overall, if you look at Horry County as a whole, and you compare it to like jurisdictions across the country, our crime rate is rather low. But how do you communicate that to someone who just had their car broken into, their car stolen, house broken into, and God forbid, robbed or shot on the street? So by having those additional patrol officers that we talked about earlier, and having that visibility in some of these communities, I think we will be effective in reducing our crime and, more importantly, reducing our fear of crime.
So there was a what do you think about a gun buyback program that occurred in Conway? I guess about 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the success of that. I couldn't quantify that myself because I didn't do any post analysis or post research on it. But there were a lot of guns that they collected. I tell you, it was done at the National Guard Armory in Conway. I mean, it was just a huge amount of guns collected.
Mm-hmm.
How can you are you all exploring something like that again? Not again, but for your first time here. Yeah.
No, I struggle with that. I've been a part of the research on gun buyback programs. And let me just ask you a question. Do you think one of our local criminals who is doing harm to our community is going to trade in or sell their gun to law enforcement? I mean,
well, those kind of questions did come up, and I thought about the same thing. A number of questions that would be applicable to that to the gun buyback program. You got to be a very honest guy. Just want to.
If you're an honest person, you're not the person we're concerned about.
Right.
So what we find in a lot of gun buyback programs is that it's me as a widow, and my wife owned a bunch of guns, and I just don't want them in the house anymore because I have grandkids.
Right.
So I want to get rid of them. And how do I get rid of them without selling them? Because I don't want these guns to wind up in the wrong hands.
Right.
So yeah, that program is effective. Now, you can turn your guns into law enforcement to have them destroyed at any time. You don't need a gun buyback program. So what you find at these gun buyback events are shotguns, cheap guns, what I call Saturday Night Special, Ravens, guns that no one really even uses anymore. So really, how effective is that in reducing crime in our community?
Yeah, good question. How effective it is. Having witnessed it as the first time I'd seen something like that, I thought it was great. But when I walked away, I thought about some same questions that you brought about. Who would want to get rid of their best guns? That's another question. And if you're a Second Amendment person, you might, some of the guns you may want to get rid of anyway. Some of the old, So
I'm sure there's merit to the program, and I don't want to, completely shoot down the ideal of it.
Right.
I think it's great. If nothing else, it's a community engagement event. That
I saw, yes.
Yeah. And so you can get out and get some education on gun ownership, how to keep your gun safely secured in your home, how not to keep it in your automobile when it's unoccupied. So there's some benefits to that type of operation. But, let's be real. Let's have a real conversation about crime reduction and what are some of the more effective methods to reducing crime in the community and the fear of crime.
Okay. I'm going to get some of these. Well, one question I don't think you're not going to answer is based on our conversation previewing the program, and that is that I still got a call on it though. Comments on the shooting in Long, South Carolina, with the young man, which was so controversial here a few days ago. Do you want to comment on it?
It would be inappropriate for me to comment. That was not an Horry County officer involved in that. That investigation is still underway, and that's being handled by SLED. So not to interfere with their investigation, I would refer all questions to SLED's public information officer. But, what I will say is that, we care about this community. If there's a concern in the community, particularly about the way Horry County police officers or sheriff's department or Myrtle Beach or any one of the jurisdictions in Horry County is conducting their business, they need to reach out to their leaders, such as Horry County. You can reach out to me. You can have a conversation. We can have a town hall. We can discuss issues that are relevant to Horry County.
Right. Now you may have answered this just a few minutes ago, but the question came up was, what are some of the barriers to good police community relations? Some of the obvious barriers that you are faced.
Yeah, some of them are the social media, the stigma associated with wearing a badge. And I would tell you,
Yeah,
there's a phenomena in law enforcement. It's called black and blue. And what that is African Americans or people of color that have chosen the profession of law enforcement.
yeah,
And a lot of times they're ostracized in the black community, not all the time, but sometimes. But I think that having someone who looks like you policing your community is a huge impact.
right,
And having somebody who's local, you went to school with, you grew up with, policing your community is a huge
right, right,
benefit.
right.
I mean,
That's
look, I'm as black as the next guy, but look, if I go to Long's and they don't know me, they don't know my peoples, there's less of a connection there to that community. I'm going to have to work twice as hard to build those relationships as someone who's born and raised here. Not impossible; it's just a challenge. But those are one of the obstacles we face. The other one is when you see stuff that's happening across the country, not affecting Horry County, but it happens in Indianapolis, LA, or New York. Social media is something else. And you feel like you're almost there when you watch the nightly news or Facebook or see some of these cell phone feeds. It affects the way you interact with law enforcement. And I can tell you that's absolutely correct because I had my own family members that were angry at what happened with the George Floyd incident. And we had some very serious conversations. People who I love and I feel love me, but they were concerned. And some of that anxiety was laid on me as a law enforcement officer. But through conversation and understanding, we got through it. But that's family. So imagine the challenge with a community member who doesn't have that tie with me or the officer. So yeah, we have a lot of challenges facing us in this country.
yeah. Well, sounds to me every time I have you on the program, you give a very very efficient to me and very efficient update, and you address the issues quite well from perspective. Anyway,
Thank
so kudos
you.
to you and in your department for that. Uh, now, let's go back to minority recruitment. Okay, I'm going to just say black Americans. Okay,
Mhm.
what and you think that's a national issue? That every look, first of all, every time I see something that goes on TV, especially, and the police are coming to the scene, I seldom see a black policeman. Okay, I seldom see a black policeman, even in some major cities. I, what do they have them inside the office all the time, or what? They're not on the beat.
I
What do you
can't speak to the country. I can just tell you from the agencies I've served in. So DC has a large African American population, as you well know. You've worked there, and they have a large African American police department population. Then you start getting out in the suburbs, Montgomery County, Fairfax County, and you start to see less and less black law enforcement, brown and black and brown. Now, Horry County, right now we mirror the population of Horry County. So the population in Horry County is about 22% based on the last census data of African Americans.
right.
And our population in the police department goes from 20 to 22%, depending
In
on
Horry County Police
in
Department?
Horry County Police Department. So the rule of thumb is always that you want to mirror your population, but that's not good enough for me.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got to do better than that. We need black and brown. And I know you're talking about African Americans, but I need my Latino brothers and sisters. I need Asian American. I need female officers of any color or origin to apply to be police officer because, the stats have proven that female police officers are less likely to engage in use of force incidents than their male counterparts. There's something to be said by that.
Well,
Uh,
why do you think that is the case? I mean, is it brain wise or what? Or what do you think?
No, I think, and this is just Joe Hill speaking, not as a police chief,
Right.
but from the officers I've encountered throughout my career. I've been doing this job since '84, and that female officers are more intuitive. They are also probably, in majority of the times, um, smaller in stature. So if you're smaller in stature and you typically have to engage men in your duty and aggressive men, you're going to learn the gift of gab. And so officers that are real good at diffusing situations, and we have that in a lot of our female officers, tend to use less violence or use less force. Educated officers, and that's why hiring officers with college degrees or military experience um, is going to provide more success based on the stats because they know what they do conflict resolution, talk your way out of a situation. Sure, I'm a big guy. I'm 240 pounds, 6'1", been in the military, fought on the stage with martial arts. But when I get on the scene as a patrol officer, or when I was a patrol officer, I took pride in the fact that I was able to talk my way out of a situation, diffuse it, stretch it out so everybody could calm down to make a peaceful arrest. And that's what the goal of every law enforcement officer should be. And we find success in female officers who adopt that philosophy more than anything else. So we're also putting our officers through crisis intervention training. And through that crisis intervention training, because we deal with a lot of mental health issues in law enforcement as a whole and in Horry County, more so than I've seen in other places. I think they're just attracted because of the environment here. But you have to diffuse that situation and understand these people are in crisis situation, either relationship, financial, or health. They may not be attacking you per se, but they're still angry at whatever situation, and they'll drag you into it unless you know how to redirect.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's take one of our comments here from Miss Wanda Bromell. Okay, she wants to know what are your views on police reform at the county level?
Sure. So, police reform, I took over about 5 years ago, a little bit more than 5 years ago, and this agency was in trouble. I'll just be frank about it. We had a lot of incidents where embarrassment, totally against what law enforcement stands for. So it came in and reformed the law enforcement here in Horry County for the Horry County PD. And that's a work that's in progress. And what I mean by that is training, holding people accountable for their actions. We've had a lot of terminations in Horry County based on integrity issues in the county police department. The same integrity issues that are across the country that should be held, these folks should be held to that standard. Lying, misconduct in office. So that's where police reform.
So lying is really a heavy penalty. Is that what you're trying to say? I mean,
That's a termination offense.
that's termination offense.
Yes, sir. Every day, all day. So if you hold these folks that serve our community to a higher standard, and believe it or not, we don't lose a lot of folks to that. We do lose some,
Right.
but the majority of them understand that, I've got to tell the truth. So even if it's something minor, like wrecking a car or forgetting to fill out a document, being honest and upfront, because I've got to have an officer where I can trust to put on the stand, because we're talking about taking away somebody's freedom here.
Yeah.
So it's critically important that the integrity remain in our profession, and it's pinnacle to what we do. When we do our swearing in ceremonies, we swear in our officers, but we also do an oath of honor every time we do a swearing in or officers gather. And that's a reminder of what that badge stands for and what this community, not just Horry County, but the community as a whole, what they expect from us.
Absolutely. I think it's a credit to your leadership of how far the Horry County Police Department has come already. And kudos to you, for your leadership in that case.
I appreciate it. Let me just address that before we move on. What we do in that police department or any police department is a right that's given to us by the citizens we serve. They allow us to police their community. So when citizens hold us accountable,
Right.
We have a better working relationship and an understanding. And that's the way it should be. When it becomes us against them, it doesn't work. and things fall apart. And we've seen that across the country. So,
Right.
although I lead this organization, it's the men and women on the ground that take that vision and they put it into action. And that's what I'm most proud of.
Again, reflection of your leadership. We have another comment here. As you can see, it's on the screen. Say, Chief Hill, thank you for all you do. What does the term suicide by police mean?
Yeah, so suicide by cop, which is commonly referred to in the media, is someone who is in that crisis mode I spoke about earlier, and they want to end their life, but they don't want to do it by their own hands. They want a police officer to do it. And so, what does that look like for an officer to respond to a scene? I've had an officer. I had a suspect who I was chasing for a burglary, and he turned around. He had stolen the TV. He had dropped the TV, but he had the remote control, and he had it in his waistband. And as I got closer to him in the foot chase, he turned around and pointed the remote control at me. And, for a split second, it looked like any other black pistol or revolver. But I had the presence of mind to get behind cover, challenge him to determine it wasn't a firearm, and then I went hands-on with him. When I arrested him, I asked him, I said, "What were you thinking? I could have killed you. I was scared to death. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to take human life." Majority of the cops out here, if not all the cops, they don't wake up in the morning saying, "I'm going to take the life of a fellow human being," but things happen. And what that guy told me was, I didn't want to go back to jail. I'm a 3-time offender. I just wanted you to kill me. Really. So that's what suicide by cop looks like. Someone who wants a police officer to end their life.
Did he have a gun, by the way?
No, he had a remote control to a TV set. And he had it in his waistband. Yeah. 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 It's crazy what we deal with in this profession across the country. There's another, and I can only speak to what's happened to me.
Right.
And I had a young man pull out a BB gun on me. And the only reason I didn't shoot that young man is because I know guns. And as I'm staring down the barrel of a gun, the hole was smaller. And I'm thinking, that's a BB gun. And, I wanted to just smack the kid on the butt and send him home to his mom. He was 16 years old. And I don't think he really understood what he was doing. I later found out he was autistic. And so he really didn't have a presence of mind to understand that could have been the end of his life right there. And those are the things that keep you up at night. You never forget those incidents. I can remember everything. I can remember the smells in the air. It was a frightening time for me.
Wow. Yeah. I think you don't you feel comfortable when you're telling us not your stories, but some of the things that have happened to you along your way of being a policeman and not just a chief.
I think it's important to share those real life experiences and not something from a textbook or recounting something you've seen on TV.
Right.
And what I'll tell you is that, I was angry that this young man, both of them, young black men, were putting me in a situation where I would take their life. And then at the end of the day, the news media would report a black man killed because he held a remote control. And no one else was in my shoes at that time. And so I was thinking back to that saying, wow, they would have crucified me today for that very same incident if I had pulled the trigger.
Well, I'm sure the activity compared to where you were in Virginia is reduced significantly, right? The activity in terms of what your role is. Were you a chief in Virginia, by the way, or you were just...
No, I was third in command ultimately before I retired, as far as the rank structure. And all these stories I'm telling you happened as a patrol officer, but they stick with you. So as you lead your organization, your unit, your squad, and ultimately your department, you factor in all of those experiences. So now we have these crisis intervention training so that you have a full understanding, or you should have a full understanding of folks that are suffering mental psychosis, autism, stressors in people's lives, to navigate de-escalation of those situations. That's how you police successfully in a community.
So if when you have events like the black bikers, where they used to be around, why do you think that causes so much controversy? I mean, they put up barriers. I'm going to assume it's behavior in the past behavior or something. What can be done so that it can get back to a so-called normal again, where they'll have the freedom to ride up and down 17. They can go to Atlantic Beach unimpeded, uninterrupted. I won't use the word harassed, but I mean, get complaints about that.
Yeah.
But what can we do to make sure that they can come and enjoy themselves like anybody else?
Sure. And I have a unique perspective because I used to come down here. I've been coming down here for 20 years as a member of the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club, long before I became chief of police here. So real quick, before I get into that story, Myrtle Beach, who operates the traffic management plan called the Loop, for the last 2 years of the Black Bike Rally, Memorial Day, Black Pearl Festival, whatever you want to call it, they have not enacted that loop. So we have not had a traffic management plan, or Myrtle Beach has not had that because the crowds didn't demand that. So let's get back to your question. So as a rider coming down here, I never felt like I was discriminated against as an African-American rider. Fast forward to me taking over as chief of police and being here. And what I found is this has become, if you're familiar with the term Freaknik, which used to be a gathering of young African Americans, college age kids, it got out of control. That's what we kind of see here. It's not so much the bike riders. It's more of the young people that come down here in the cars, jam-packed, 5, 6, and 7 in the Honda Accord.
Yeah.
And that's what's caused the majority of our problems. Your motorcycle riders, me included, we're not the problem most times. It's the young people in the cars.
Right.
The sheer volume of the motorcycle and the cars mix for that Memorial holiday weekend dictates a traffic management plan if it becomes over. Because emergency vehicles can't operate to get the people who need us. Communities are besieged by the noise and by the crowd. So we as African Americans have got to conduct ourselves in an appropriate manner, and majority of the bikers do. So a real quick story, the gathering that takes place at the Myrtle Beach Mall where Hooters is located, you would have, 200 to 300 bikers in cars by Hooters and about 20 Horry County cops on the other side by Bass Pro Shops watching the crowd. So when I got there, my first time as a police chief here, I was like, guys and girls, let's go. Let's intermingle with the crowd. Let's welcome these visitors who are taxpayers while they're here, contributing to our economy. Let's make them feel welcome. We're not an opposing force. So we walked over, some of them reluctantly, and we interacted with that crowd. And let me tell you, for the last 5 years, we have not had one issue with that crowd that gathers there. North Myrtle Beach Police Chief Tommy Dennis, and before him, Jay Fernandez, started that. They did a phenomenal job. They welcomed these bike groups to the community, and they worked with them to solve problems. And that's what we have to do. Absolutely.
I've driven by there, and I saw that situation set up there at the Hooters. But I thought the Hooters was shut down by now.
No, they're going strong.
They're going strong.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But apparently, Horry County doesn't get any bad publicity. Of course, not too many things that have happened that required, us to have national bad publicity. Again, respect your leadership for that. It's a credit to you. I think Horry County is glad to have you. I think that's a plus in our coffers, to have you. So again, it's 8 o'clock now, and I know you've been talking, but I know there's a lot more that can be said. I won't belabor the issue. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. And you're welcome on come on here at any time. You know that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're gonna try to get our local police chief in Conway, Chief Long. We're going to have him on. Yeah,
he's a good man.
Yeah, he provides some good information. Very much so, just like yourself. We'll get him on. So, but anyway, thank you so much again. And you got it for recruiting info. It's up and more. You can visit horrycounty.gov/police, right?
Absolutely. You can also go to our Facebook page, but that website is the Horry County government official page, and the police is our page, which has recruiting information. If you need to file a complaint on the officer, it shows you how to do that. It shows you where you are as far as what sector and what precinct covers you. A lot of information. Of course, my email is on there. If you have any questions, anyone can always email me or call me, and I always pick up the phone.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, because you believe it or not, you've got a number of age groups that do not frequent computers to look on Facebook or anything.
Sure.
With that kind of information. It's a wealth of information up there, but people are set in their ways. It's a huge number, in this area, because this is a retirement area.
Yes.
To put it mildly, and that's why you have such a significant amount of people who don't frequent the platforms of social media as often as your typical person does. Okay, so is there a number now? If they don't frequent these platforms or frequent their computers, or is there a telephone number that they could just call and get some kind of their issues addressed?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. If you look on the website, we got
I'm talking the website.
Yeah, you're talking about the great digital divide. So 843-915-8014. That is my desk number. And I may not be always sitting at my desk.
Okay, that's important, and that's really critical too. I'm glad you said it was your desk.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my phone number.
Right, 843
915.
915.
Yep, 814.
8014.
Yes,
and
sir.
they can call you. Okay.
Yes, and many people do, believe it or not. And if there's an issue at the precinct level, I will redirect you back to your precinct commanders.
Right.
If a general question that you need to ask me, I'll be glad to answer it. I do take vacations every now and again.
Really? I weren't aware of that.
But you can leave a message and I will be sure to call you back. We are a small community, but yet we are a very large community, but we need to be, as leaders, accessible to our community.
See, Chief, this is going to be so important when an elderly person or a person of age, really wants to know that a human voice is going to answer their phone. If you were there,
Mm-hmm.
and that this number I think is critical for them. Okay, that's the number they can just get on and call, and they can leave a message. I mean, that can get to you. Okay. Suppose you have call forwarding at some point. I don't know.
Yes, and I tell you, I get a lot of calls from senior Horry County residents concerned about everything from littering to noise in their community to gunshots. And believe it or not, I really enjoy speaking to these folks. I understand they're in a bit of panic or crisis when they call.
Right.
But when you resolve their issues for them, man, that's a good feeling. Wow. That's why I took this job.
Say that again. That's why
That's why I took this job. Not
job.
Just as chief of police, but as a police officer. And that's what the majority of us want to do. Solve
right. Yeah. Hey man, it's been great talking to you.
You too.
As always, we're going to have you back again. You have such strong conversations as to what I think the people need and then what they want to hear. Okay, so thanks again, and our viewers, thank you all for listening to us, looking or viewing us today. We really appreciate that. We've been getting some good responses, and we've been growing. Our new issue of the community magazine is coming out in about 3 days, and we hope to have a lot of issues in there regarding this month. This month is Breast Month. Okay, so October is Breast Cancer Month, and to our viewers, I think next week, I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Next week we're going to have our breast cancer expert from Washington D.C. who's going to be on there to talk about the issues of breast cancer and what the new advancements that have taken place. There's been some new discoveries, new technologies, and she wants to highlight those. Okay, so Dr. Regina Hampton from Washington D.C., the D.C. area, and she's currently located in PG County in Maryland. Huge business there with prosthetics for breast cancer victims. Okay, so again, Chief, thank you so much.
Sure.
And what is this? You got there's another comment here. It says from Ms. Lance that Chief Hill does take vacations, and rightfully so, and he's very responsive. Do you know her?
I don't know her, I don't think, but I appreciate it, Ms. Lance. I do appreciate it. And just to let you know, we appreciate you, Brother McQueen. You are one of the integral parts of this community, and I appreciate you giving a voice to the community. And I'm also a cancer survivor, so I will be.
Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. Thank you so much for those comments. I'll pass it on to April. April is looking. She's co-host.
Oh,
so, yeah. You
couldn't do it without it. You could not do it.
She's just as much. So look, to our viewers, we'll see you next week. God bless, and thank you all for the comments. Everybody for the comments. It's been very informative. We got some new people who are sending in their comments. That's very good. It means that you're looking and you're viewing and to our programs of interest. Okay, so we'll see you next week. Am I missing anything? April didn't send me any chats, anything. So until next week, same time, 7 p.m. On Facebook and YouTube. YouTube will go through our website, wcmagazine.net. See you next week. God bless.
Thank you for watching the World Community Magazine's Hour of Power Live on Facebook with your host Edward McQueen and April Garner.